Hey, this is the Air Hug Community Podcast, where we never say never. Hey, I'm just going to hop in and give a quick intro. Yes, this is the Air Hug Community Podcast. So if you've never been here before, this is a podcast all about thriving in midlife instead of merely just surviving. And on this podcast, you get stories from myself and special guests who have some kind of input on what it's actually like to go through midlife. The good, the bad, the ugly, and how we're coming through it. So it's very realistic, and that's what we're all about here. Today, we're talking about never saying never when it comes to food. Yum. Hey there, before we get started, I just want to pop in. So this was a little bit different method for me to record today. I did record with the camera on, and I'm going to pop this up. There, I said it. I'm going to put it on YouTube. Anyways, so there'll be a couple of references to actually visualizations, but I just wanted to put that out there so that you kind of understood when I kind of make a reference to being able to seeing something. It really isn't going to make a difference here for your listening. So let's get after it. Hey you, I am so glad you joined us today. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome back to the Air Hug community. How do you like our background today? I thought it was kind of fun. Okay, it's mirror image. I think I'm going in this way, but it's that way. But anyways, I just thought this would be fun. And if you're listening only to the audio, you're kind of like wondering what we're talking about. But I'm actually recording this for fun on Zoom with a little fireside fall themed background, fireside chat fall themed background, because I thought it would be fun. And anyways, let's go. So today's chat, I promised you we were going to chat about food today, but what I really want to talk about is not being so rigid and so worried about abstinence, okay? And wanted to have a food chat today, and I think the theme of it is never say never. So with that, my point is, I hate to use the word abstinence when it comes to food, unless you have a severe allergy, because I think people have gotten so binary and so worried these days about good or bad, eat or don't eat, do this or don't that, and getting rid of entire food groups that I think it's just become way too much. And people sometimes just throw their hands up in the air and say, I don't know what to eat anymore. Am I supposed to eat keto? Am I supposed to eliminate food groups? Are carbs bad? Are fats bad? Are proteins bad? It just becomes way too confusing. And so with that, I will say there are some things that maybe you could choose. I'm not going to say should, because I don't like the should or should not, but it might serve your body well to choose these foods less often. And then you can decide if it's something that doesn't work for you, maybe when you reintroduce it and see how you feel. And the best way to do this is to eliminate it for a while and then reintroduce it. But by and large, I think it's really important to understand that there are no hard and fast foods that are bad for everybody. But with that said, I want to go into a list of things that you may want to consider temporarily eliminating from your diet and then reintroducing to see how it feels for you. One of these things is vegetable shortening. And some people will give you the argument that butter is better and the vegetable shortening is bad. And some people will give you the opposite or argument. And here's why. Okay, so vegetable shortenings have hydrogenated oils, and they are artificially made by adding a hydrogen molecule to them. Why is this desirable? Well, for marketing, it keeps things more solid at room temperature. Okay, it increases the shelf life of these fats, but here's the downside. They can increase the bad cholesterol, the low density lipoproteins, all right? And they can decrease the good cholesterol that we actually want to have in our body. And those are the high density lipoproteins. So they may be a contributor to increasing the risk for heart disease. So that would be an argument for why you may want to eliminate them from your diet. And you can also talk to your doctor about this. All right. So, but if you bake, for example, maybe you want to stick to real butter, and maybe you don't bake that often anyways, but I tend to want to go to things when I bake that are actually less processed. So real butter would be less processed than a hydrogenated vegetable shortening. Or in many cases, people will laugh at me, but I really like to bake with real olive oil. And I love the flavor that it gives. It's actually kind of a fruity flavor. So I will often do my baking with real olive oil, but that's just a suggestion. Moving on. All right, here's another food that you may want to consider eliminating from your diet, maybe temporarily, and reintroducing it later. And all of these is basically what I'm telling you is if you want to think about it. And this is non-dairy creamer. Again, this is, and I won't tell you that I don't have this in our house. I actually keep it here. I'm going to say as an emergency because my husband likes creamer in his coffee. And when we have guests, they like creamer in their coffee. And we don't always, what if we run out of half and half? Like our preferred creamer here to serve people and for my husband is half and half, again, because it's less processed. But non-dairy creamers, those powders, right? Or even the liquid ones, they have hydrogenated oils in them, just like the vegetable shortening that we just talked about. They also have high fructose corn syrup in them, which can actually contribute to an increase in liver fat. So we want to keep our liver healthy, and a fatty liver is not a healthy liver. So the other thing is they may have artificial sweeteners, and those are linked to GI problems and GI, standing for gastrointestinal distress. So if you suffer maybe from any of these issues, you might want to just try eliminating that for a while and see if you feel better. All right. So, okay. Number 3, the food that I'm talking about, again, that you can experiment with is diet soda. All right. So most mainstream diet sodas have artificial, I do this every time, artificial sweeteners. All right. And these can be worse than sugar because according to some dietitians, and you can look this up as well, specifically a dietitian that I looked up in a New York City nutritionist found research that said artificial sweeteners are actually linked to some cancers, all right? And they're really linked to gastrointestinal issues. So a lot of people think they might have gastrointestinal issues from one food, but they're not thinking about their diet soda. So what you could do is try an elimination for a while. Don't change anything else in your diet. Try eliminating the diet soda that has whatever it is in it, and then maybe reintroduce it and see if the symptoms reappear. So for me, I actually found this to be true. And so I'm not a big diet soda person, but there is a diet soda that I do like that is sweetened naturally with stevia, which is a natural sweetener that our body doesn't process. So we don't glean calories from it, but it also doesn't cause gastrointestinal upset. So there's that. But aspartame, which is an artificial sweetener that is used in many diet sodas, has also been linked to diabetes. So you might want to think about that. All right. Here's another one. Low-fat peanut butter. A lot of times people think, okay, great, if I'm going low fat, I might be better. But a lot of low fat foods, the way they make them more palatable is to add in fillers and sugars. And so what you're taking away in fat calories, you might be adding in sugar calories. So you can think about that. Again, I don't not eat peanut butter. I will tend to eat more natural peanut butter or a regular peanut butter. Natural is my preferred one, because it's just peanuts and salt. And sometimes they have added oils. If I can find one without added oils, I feel even better about that, just because it's less processed. It's closer to an all-natural food. So this is one that a lot of people may or may not be aware of, but It's larger fish. So big fish like tilefish and swordfish and some tunas, including big eye and ahi, shark, marlin, grouper, orange roughy, mackerel, and bluefin, by the way, bluefish. These are all large fish. And the larger the fish, the more likely, because remember, they're higher up on the food chain in the ocean, the more likely they are to acquire toxins in their flesh. So, and specifically, mercury is a toxin that is known to be in larger fish. So you can choose to either avoid these or limit these. So I tend to just limit them. I used to think of once a month and once a week, I'm sorry, but now I'm down to like once or twice a month. And excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. I hate when that happens. Okay, it's not going to happen. All right, anyways. All right, so, but that's one that you can think of. And especially if you're a pescatarian and you rely on large fish quite a bit for your protein source, you may want to rethink that and then just consider. So some other fish that you could maybe limit, but not as much, would be albacore tuna, yellowfin, sablefish, Chilean sea bass, halibut. And these, it's recommended to have less than or equal to 3 servings a month. So I know a lot of us like to have up to 2 servings or maybe more of fish per week, but we can do it. We just have to be a little bit more cautious. So there's that. All right. Another food that you may want to think about trying a little elimination with and returning back to is cereal that is low fiber. And that would mean a highly processed cereal. So you want to aim for your cereal to have, here's just a suggestion. You can do it if you want, but 5 or more grams of fiber. And, you know, you want whole grain to be the first ingredient in your cereal. So preferably, from my point of view, I also prefer it to have some protein in it. I prefer it to have 5 to 20 grams of protein per serving, but that's just me. If I'm going to eat more plant-based, I love it if my cereal would provide me with some protein. But the thing is, with cereal, if it's low fiber, that means it's highly processed. It's closer to being something like white sugar, which once we digest in our system, we digest it pretty quickly. We get a high blood sugar spike, and we're more likely to get that resulting low sugar spike versus if we're eating a grain that's got more fiber in it, we're going to have a more steady blood sugar. So it's not that high blood sugar is bad. It's more steady blood sugar. And it's not that carbs are bad. But a highly processed carb is going to give you that high spike, which is usually followed by a low spike where you might feel like shaky or foggy, you know, versus having a smaller spike up and smaller spike down. You're having a little bit more even keel of glucose available for energy and especially for brain power. So if you suffer from those bouts of like foggy brain or just, you know, that you can feel that you have low blood sugar, maybe you want to think about cutting out, if that's something that you eat regularly, you know, something that comes to mind to me, like a highly processed cereal with no fiber in it. Although I always really liked it as a kid, is something like Rice Krispies, or coming to mind right now is Captain Crunch. Isn't that funny? Like now I wouldn't dare to eat it. I couldn't stand how it would get caught in my teeth, although I would eat Rice Krispies. But I have found that I do get that feeling and I feel a little bit better without doing that. And that actually goes, you can think of the same as bread that has, you know, no fiber in it. So most of us don't make our own bread, but if you do, then maybe you know if there's fiber, what the fiber content is or not. So the thing is, I don't want to say never eat these foods. Okay, like I'm going to tell you right now that I'm not going to never eat a bread made with white flour again, or a pizza dough, because I do like pizza, you know? And so maybe if I'm going to have pizza that day, I will make sure that my fiber for the day is adequate so that I'm not low on fiber that day and I'm okay. As far as I know my GI system, I'll be okay with that. So these are just things like for this, the cereal, a lot of people think that they're gluten intolerant, and I know the celiacs absolutely are, but there are other people who have kind of figured out that they do better without gluten containing ingredients. But what the reason for that is because most of the gluten containing ingredients that they have been having have been highly processed with zero fiber. So they do get that blood sugar spike and subsequent drop. So things like, pasta that has zero fiber in it, and bread and cereals that have zero fiber in it. And of course, they felt so much better when they got rid of it. But switching out that food for a gluten-free food that also has no fiber in it might not make a difference, which is what I noticed. At first I thought gluten was the culprit. And what I realized later was that I missed the fiber that occurs naturally in these foods when they're less processed. So just there's a thought for you. But the overlying theme of today's chat is don't just blindly automatically become abstinent in a food because it's popular. Know why you might want to minimize a food or eliminate it for a period of time, and know what it does to you. And the best way to do that is to be your own detective. So maybe try eliminating it. Now, what I will tell you is don't eliminate all these things at once. If you suspect they might bother you, just pick one. Don't change anything else about your diet and maybe eliminate it for a little bit. I did that with diet soda and then later on brought it back in. Now with fish, I don't really notice the difference because I haven't been tested for mercury poisoning or anything. So because I like to eat a lot of fish, have chosen to follow guidelines with the bigger fish. I just choose them less often. And I will never say never. Like I really, really like ahi, tuna, and halibut. So I just try to only eat them infrequently versus as my staple seafood item for the week. I'm more likely to have a smaller fish like salmon because salmon is a smaller fish, or I might grab calamari that I can make on my own because it's a smaller seafood kind of thing. So I hope this was helpful for you. Again, the point of this whole chat was to learn to be your own best advocate. And by the way, here are the foods I mentioned, some foods that might be contributing to your actually not feeling great after you eat them. And I just thought it would be awesome to bring them up and share with you and let you determine if they work for you or not. All right. So thank you very much. And feel free to respond with comments. I'm always open to comments. If you liked this episode, please give me a positive comment or a positive review if you're listening on a podcast app, such as Apple or Spotify, or a positive comment if you're watching on YouTube. And remember to check in on Tuesdays for new episodes here on the Air Hug Community Podcast. If this has left you with questions about maybe what might be a good option for you to begin with in these situations, feel free to drop me a message and I'd be happy to have a chat with you. Also remember next week to tune into the Air Hug Community Podcast for an all-new episode next Tuesday.